They ransacked, they decimated the Muslim world, and this is no exaggeration. Western historians mention they reached Poland, they reached Bulgaria, they reached Moscow, but they mentioned that what they did to the Muslim world was unparalleled in cruelty. When they took Bukhara, the narrations mentioned they gathered every single Muslim in the masjids and they butchered them. When they took Samarkand, they gathered the Muslims outside Samarkand, and then every single Muslim was butchered, and then they cut off their heads and they made pyramids out of their heads. When they took Gurgan, Juwaini, the famous historian, mentions that there were 50,000 Mongol soldiers. Each one had been given 24 Muslims to execute. And then after that, they marched upon where? They marched upon the Muslim Caliphate, Baghdad. Baghdad was the most beautiful city in the Muslim world, if not the most beautiful city in the world. Musta'sim was the Caliph. And when Halugu reached the outskirts of Baghdad, Musta'sim consulted his advisors, and they said the best thing is that you go and ask for terms. And Halugu has made it clear, said if you are going to come out, don't come out by yourself. Bring your advisors with you, bring your ulama with you. So Musta'sim came out with 700 men, and Halugu only allowed 18 to enter into the tent. And they took the rest. These were the cream of the crop of Baghdad, and they butchered every single one. And now Musta'sim is standing in the court of the Mongol prince. And the same Musta'sim, people would come to his court. He would rebuke, he would chastise. He's shaking in front of Halugu, and then Halugu mentions that I'm going to keep you alive for a while. And the reason that they kept him alive is that they wanted him to go back into Baghdad and tell his men to put their weapons down. So they took him back to Baghdad. And when he had told the people of Baghdad to put their weapons down, the narrations mention they brought his 3 children in front of him, and then they butchered them. Then they brought his sisters in front of him, and in front of his eyes they killed his sisters.
Welcome back to the John Fredericks Show. That's a very interesting documentary. Dr. Michael Scheuer, yes. What a wonderful piece on the Mongols and the Muslims. The time now is 8:11. I believe on the line we have our very special guest today. Welcome back once again. He's always with us, Admiral James Ace Lyons. Admiral, welcome back to the John Fredericks Show.
Yeah, and great to be back with you all and with your audience.
Sir, how did you like that intro? Were you listening to that about the Mongols?
I missed part of it.
Okay,
right.
We'll send you a little clip of that so you can get a taste of it. Admiral, you were back on the show. Last we spoke was last year, almost at the new year, and then Trump got elected. There's so much in the news, so much with wiretapping, so much in the deep state. You're with Colonel Mike and Dr. Michael Scheuer. Why don't you tell some of our listeners what you believe is happening right now in the intelligence world, in the Muslim world, and what's going on?
Well, let's be very clear. Under the Obama administration, the penetration of the Muslim Brotherhood into our government agencies, including our intelligence agencies, which has gone on for years but was greatly accelerated under the Obama administration. In fact, they wound up having carte blanche entree into the White House. I mean, Brennan, who was the former head of the CIA, is alleged in 1994 to be a convert to Islam. And that's who you put in as the head of the CIA. I mean, this is more than the fox in the hen coop. This is a pure dereliction of duty. So the fact that the intelligence community at through certain levels appears to be in somewhat disarray, you have to sort out all this fire and smoke and get down to the fundamentals here. The wiretapping and that went on apparently against members of President Trump's entourage, leading up to and clearly post-election results, is more than troubling. In fact, the dissemination of that information and the lowering of the classification so that it could be disseminated throughout government agencies where Obama supporters could leak it to their favorite media outlets is a felony.
Admiral, but do we think, or do we know, if the new Attorney General, Sessions, or the people around him have purged enough so that we can get to the bottom of this? I mean, this needs surgical precision.
Let me say, Mike, about, I know Attorney General Sessions. I've met him several times. He's a wonderful man, a very, very honest and upfront individual. However, I have to question, why would the Attorney General turn to Obama's ethics people for advice on whether he should recluse himself from the ongoing investigations? This, to me, made absolutely no sense. And in fact, what he did within the department, until you get the deputy in there, he turned over the investigation to Obama's clones.
Correct.
So and furthermore, it's all nonsense.
Correct.
This whole thing that the Russians hacked into our election and somehow skewed the results. There's not a shred of evidence of it. It's all smoke and mirrors. The DNC is in total disarray, and we should not be caving into these charges, these unfounded charges, which have no basis in reality.
Well, Admiral, if you look at any of these articles in the Washington Post or New York Times, they go on for about 7 to 10 paragraphs before they say with no proof. Correct, Dr.
Yeah, nobody gets to that paragraph.
Yeah.
It's really, it tells you how important the election of President Trump was to really clean out, as he says, the swamp in Washington, the elite political establishment that have been feathering their nests for years and years and leaving the everyday American on the sidelines. This is such a dramatic change for the survival of the country and the protection of our Constitution and individual freedoms. I just can't emphasize it enough what a breath of fresh air it is. And, of course, your listeners should note, which I'm sure many of them have, all the smoke and mirrors about these false accusations and so forth. What it has done, it has kept the Hillary issues, the Clinton Foundation criminal activity, and the Obama criminal activity certainly off the front pages.
Mike?
Well, Mike Scheuer here, sir. I'm happy to talk to you. I think, at least I hope that the new administration has enough sense to just go about quietly preparing those indictments that you just talked about against the foundation, against the Clintons.
One of the things, Mike, what we got to do, you got to purge out. You have to purge out all the Muslim Brotherhood and Obama plants that have been seeded throughout our government agencies.
I think that's exactly right, Admiral.
One thing, I don't know who's doing the vetting for President Trump, but somehow they better come back and revisit some of President Trump's policies and statements. For example, his new national security advisor, who doesn't want to use the term radical Islam. And let me just say, because he feels it is a tool to be used by ISIS in recruitment. That's all nonsense.
You're talking about McAllister? Admiral, are you talking about McAllister?
To me, using the term radical Islam implies there's some moderate version of Islam. And the bottom line is it doesn't exist. All the atrocities that are being committed today by Al-Qaeda, ISIS, are all drawn from the core tenets of Islam. And the bottom line is Islam is a totalitarian ideology bent on world domination, masquerading as a religion. Until you understand that, you will not be successful in defeating the threat.
I think there's much to be said for that point of view, sir. And I also you got it?
I get it. All right.
Excuse me, sir. Colonel Mike and I were talking earlier this morning, and you know, if this was indeed a phenomenon that was not related to the faith, and if you were generous and said there's probably 1 million jihadis in the field around the world today, and if it was a real offense against Islam, what they're doing, there'd be 1.6 billion Muslims who would be reaching out to crush every one of their skulls. And the point that Americans have not caught on to is that Osama bin Laden, for example, was the poster boy of a good Muslim.
Of course.
Yeah, and if you say that, of course, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a Islamophobe, but that's the truth. And you know, I don't know if that's I really don't care how people live, but you have to defend yourself. And until we are able to say, listen, whatever you think of attacking a faith is attacking you. And until you begin...
Let me say, you say 1.6 million Muslims, 1.6 billion
yes.
Muslims. Those 1.6 billion Muslims, if you go to their core tenets, have no problem confronting 6.5 billion citizens of the rest of the world. Yeah. So, it's you just have to recognize that that's part of their ideology.
Well, that's exactly right, and I guess it's become part of our ideology to just say, well, this is so complex and so nuanced, we can't say everybody's involved in this, and what the heck? A war is a war at the end of the day, and the only mercy is a quick conclusion. And it's now almost 20 years, and we're still not talking about the problems we face, about the threat we face, or about the reality that whether we like it or not, these people are inspired by their faith, and nothing is much more inspiring than that. And I wish Mr. Trump would be a little bit more frank with the American people and not continue to pussyfoot around a little bit.
Admiral, sir, were you talking about...
Here's the thing, Mike. Look, and you still got Obama people running the government.
Well,
look at defense. We haven't had one position filled in defense. And I got to say, with Mathis as the Secretary of Defense, I have to ask, why does he keep trying to put Obama and Democratic supporters into key positions in the Defense Department. Later, Ann Patterson, he wanted her as his deputy. Then he wants her as the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. She's a clear Obama clone. You have to say, what is going on here? Doesn't he get it?
I'm surprised, as you are, with some of what's going on at the Defense Department. I thought he got it, sir. I thought he was a very good choice.
Well, let me just tell you, he's a good warfighter. He proved himself on the field. However, he's one of the authors with Petraeus of the failed coin strategy. They developed it together at the Army War College. So, I'll go back to who's betting these people.
Yeah. Well, the coin business was an absurdity, as was the surge, as was the rest of it. We just let them live to fight another day.
And on the surge, now, the way we got the surge, we let pull out all the crap. What we did, the way we got the turnaround, was we brought over pallets of cash, which were amply distributed. We bought them.
Exactly.
That's what it was. We bought them.
Well, not only that, sir, but they knew we were giving the country to the Shia, and they needed training and guns and money to fight the war that was coming.
You got it.
Yeah.
Admiral, do you remember when those pallets of cash were going over? There was a few pallets that fell off the back of some of those trucks, and we'd never heard from a viceroy anymore by the name of Paul Bremer. Do you remember that? By the way, the gentleman you're speaking about is McAllister. I'm just as disappointed as you are with the pick of McAllister.
Yeah. All right.
All right, we're coming down to the last minute, Admiral. Anything else you want to say to us? We want to thank you for being back on the John Fredericks Show once again.
It's an honor to have you, sir.
Well, let me just say, we have to rally behind President Trump and his agenda, which is to bring back America, put America first, put our interests first, raise the well-being of every American, and creating the type of environment and the opportunities that only exist in America. So,
isn't it odd how many people that
restoring our individual freedoms and really creating the type of environment that has made America the shining city on the hill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
The very same political party that has vied for power in countries such as Egypt has also been setting up front groups 5,000 miles away. For decades now, the Ikhwan, or the Muslim Brotherhood, have operated secretly behind the scenes in America. Their influence reaches from the halls of academia, to Hollywood and the media, even to law enforcement, and to the highest levels of political power.
The Muslim Brotherhood is an international movement, the goal of which is to create an Islamic state universally, all over the world. The Muslim Brotherhood operates in various countries around the world. And as we learned in the course of our investigation and our work, the United States was one of those.
When you walked into the convention center, and they had these big banners hanging up from the over this area, and it said, "Death to Israel, death to America." One of the people who were working with me said, "You know what, Bob? These people are Muslim Brotherhood." I said, "What's that?"
Now, in my mind, the Muslim Brotherhood is the mother of all Islamic organization of the 20th century, including Al-Qaeda. The West as we see today, instead of isolating the Muslim Brotherhood, actually engaging the Muslim Brotherhood as the organization that's moderate, and these are the Muslims we can talk to. The West is tremendously naive about the danger of these various Islamic organizations.